Hello and welcome to this podcast. David Marshall from Seth Network England. I have a problem saying that sometimes. And also the Conscious Creation Academy. And today we're talking about the magical approach. So I put a bit of a post up and somebody said, could you give us some examples of the magical approach and that type of thing? And so I sat down, I thought about it and thought I would create a little podcast about it because it's easier for me in terms of getting my head around it and explaining it and this type of thing of what it is for me to actually speak it out. Hence why, podcasting really is the way for me to explore these ideas or speaking about them generally. That's what I find the easiest way. So let's just go through, I thought it might be useful to go through the different areas of the magical approach. And certainly I can say, from the fact that right now I don't lock my car, I don't lock my house, I certainly expect the best things to happen and certainly live far more of a magical approach and a magical life than ever. And when I think of where I was 10 years ago, if you like, then my whole approach to life is completely different and much more relaxed. I'm not saying challenging things don't happen, but they happen less and less. And often they're day by day, very few challenging things happen. Sometimes I get a big thing happen that I need to resolve that takes me by surprise. But again, that is less and less as I go through. So I thought I'd explore the magical approach because I absolutely adore it. I love using this approach because it just works. And I would never, ever go back to the old way of thinking. So got a quote here just to start us off, which is from Seth. It says, "We are indeed dealing with two entirely different approaches to reality and to solving problems. Methods we will call here the rational method and the magical one. The magical approach has far greater weight if you use it and allow yourselves to operate in that fashion because it has the weight of your basic natural orientation." And I picked that one because that really resonated with me, and it's true. When I have been trying to solve in the past, in inverted commas, trying to solve problems and create the life I wanted purely through the intellect, the overuse of the intellect, without being connected to my inner resources and the things I'll talk about in a second, life's really, really hard. It really is. And I'm just delighted that I'm able to operate in this fashion and that I don't actually have to do that anymore. So the couple of things to pick out of that is that it is a completely different approach to solving problems. Less and less problems come up in my experience, but also when they do, it's actually a more of a creative way to create solutions to problems, and it's much more natural. So I feel as though this, and it's an inner sense, I feel the power of the magical approach, and I am getting better and better, really much, much better than I've ever been before at using that, because I do feel it's a natural approach. It's a natural, joyful, playful, interesting way to explore and to create things, and that's why my main interest in all this kind of stuff has always been the practical application, really, of the magical approach, I think could sum it up. So I put some details here. I'll go through how I've used it in a few different areas. But essentially, I just wanted to go through one of the key things for me that I found. I know Linda Madden-Dahl talks about trust, and it really is a big thing. So the first one is trust and relaxation. I think one of the things about the magical approach is that you need to trust yourself. You need to trust it. You need to acknowledge it in your life, and also relax kind of into it. Allow it to come through you, and allow yourself to relax into this approach. And I think one of the difficulties that I notice with other people I talk to, if we're doing courses or whatever it would be, or just talking to people, is there's an impatience. They want results, bang, there, now. And the magical approach has more of a flow to it. I'm not saying you don't get results quickly. I certainly have and do, but I think on a broader basis than that, it's about getting into the flow of the magical approach. And I think that takes time in our terms to build that up and to allow ourselves to relax into it. But trusting oneself is key to the magical approach, and also the relaxation as well. Also, the second thing I think is that belief in the goodness. I know that's a bit like trust, but it's slightly different. So to believe in the goodness of reality, the natural, life-affirming gracious goodness, richness of the magical approach and of reality is a really good starting point, because obviously that goes into trust, but a belief in the goodness and the richness and the beauty of reality itself, I think, really allows the magical approach to come in through you even more, and also you'll obviously experience it in your reality. So I kind of, and I think Seth might have called it this, but or not. I think he called it nonchalant expectation. So you could call it that, but there's a kind of relaxed expectation of goodness, a relaxed expectation of things to work out in your favor. So quite a good core belief you might have is that everything works out for the best. Okay, so that's a core belief I have. Therefore, that allows me to trust myself, to trust reality, to relax, and it brings together this kind of belief in the goodness and my expectation to kind of to key into that, all those different things. So, relaxed expectation, I found, is a really good way for me to think about how I expect things to happen. I'm not rushing it. I'm not pushing it from an ego point, from framework 1. I'm not pushing it. I do take action in line with what I expect to happen, but I don't emotionally push it. So it's a kind of a trick, if you like, in a way. So the fourth thing is I find with the magical approach that really, once I completely accepted the nature of reality, that this is a state of consciousness, that I am not floating on a planet in space. I'm as dead now as I'm ever going to be, and this is one experience in amongst of millions, if you like, on my journey. Then actually, once I accepted that, it allowed me to relax, because that is the truth. That is the truth of the matter as far as we know, and it feels good, and therefore it allows me again to relax into myself, into my reality, into my broader self, and actually take my natural, it's kind of like doing that allows me to take my natural position, if you like, in reality, my natural space, my tone and my note in reality. So a complete acceptance of the nature of reality I found really helpful, and continue to do. Even as I'm saying it, I'm feeling, that feels right for me. So that's good. And from that point, obviously, I can then create things much more easily, and that's the whole point of all these things. So the next thing is about the use of suggestion. Often what you're doing is just suggesting something into reality, and then trusting that the inner self, the broader self, will actually begin to get that to flow. Remember that in framework 2, then as soon as you think something, it is created, it is real. It's only that it takes a bit of time here to build up the energy before it will impress itself into physical reality for you. So the use of suggestion is something really good, and not hammering at it. You might suggest something a couple of times a day, leave it, allow your inner self. And this is where trying to get in touch with those inner senses is really, really essential, because I do get a strong sense of feeling that it's okay, of feeling the progression of this project, of whatever it is I'm trying to create. So, trusting in a reality is also really important. I'm very lucky to have Aaron, my inner self, my broader self, around for a very long time, my oldest friend, and in this lifetime, and therefore that's very easy for me. But I also trust that inner reality is good. It kind of comes back to that, but trusting oneself, trusting the goodness, trusting enough to relax, and then trusting in a reality to deliver, if you like. The seventh thing I've got down here is fun. Try and have fun with it. Try and be playful. I find things that are playful are created much more quickly. Okay, so it's about learning, for me, to gather those fun energies, those fun feelings, and then impressing those. However difficult the situation may be that I'm trying to create or responding to in some fashion, then getting that sense of fun and expectation of it being easy is also good. Number 8 is the inner senses. I think developing the inner senses is essential. It's absolutely essential to a relaxed and magical life. If one can feel one's inner self, if one can feel when things are going right, and I'll talk you through a couple of areas of my own creations where my inner senses played the most essential part. One of which is actually being on the internet. The only reason I'm actually on the internet and learned to build websites, and now I'm using these skills to share the Sethian ideas out as much as I possibly can, and to set my tone, is the fact that I was sitting talking to somebody. I was teaching healing, I think, at the time. This is in 96, 95, 96, and just got it's just like an energy arrived, and my inner senses just blew up when we were talking about the internet. It was just astounding, and I knew at that point, obviously I'd been healing for a while before that, all that kind of other stuff going on, so I was in tune with those, luckily, and I just got such a strong sense. It was overwhelming, and I went and built my first websites, and now it's really allowing me to set my tone in the world, and to express ideas as wide as I possibly can, and to play my part in the exploration and the sharing of these ideas. So the inner senses are essential, I think, to develop and use, and because they're practical, it's practical stuff. Number 9 is taking action, which is, you've got to take physical action. I call it physical, so let's call it framework 1, action in framework 1. And framework 2, but you have to expect something. So if you're, for instance, I'm very good at spending money. I'm very good at spending money because I expect other money to come in, and I expect that I'm safe to do that. I didn't start off by spending hundreds of pounds or thousands of pounds. I started off by spending an extra £5 or £1, and that built up my confidence. And as I did that, it was a real learning curve for finances for me. Financial awareness and security was one of the things I really had to deal with, and thankfully have now. But that was all step by step. So I took action in that area, and I also expected it to come out, and that grew. So taking action in framework 1 is essential, but not massive action. Sometimes it's just taking a little bit of cheeky action, just calling a person or deciding something, or, just turning left instead of right, just to see what happens, because you know what? You feel as though actually there's something in there in what you're trying to create. So it's that playful thing again. Number 10 is an understanding of probabilities. So, the Seth books are littered with explorations, and Unknown Reality 1 and 2 are really about probabilities. So I think an understanding to some degree of probabilities allows you to remove the friction. So if I'm trying to create something, I recognize that I'm in one probability and I'm attempting to actualize another probability. And because I'm consciously aware of that, then there's no friction, there's no forcing. I'm simply allowing, if you like, with the knowledge of probabilities. So if you hadn't read Unknown 1 and Unknown 2, I think that really lends itself to the magical approach. And number 11 is kind of breadcrumbs, and I've put there, which is you kind of just follow the breadcrumbs, a bit like Hansel and Gretel. So you follow one thing, look out in your reality for responses to what you're focusing on, and then respond to them, joyfully, celebrate, and all that kind of stuff, So you will create what you want without a shadow of a doubt. It will happen because of the nature of reality. What you've got to learn is just to follow the trail, if you like, act in the right way, to relax, to believe in the goodness and all the things we've talked about. So just to summarize, so trust and relaxation is key. Belief in the goodness of oneself and reality, is I've also found, is key. Have a relaxed expectation, nonchalant, great word, expectation of things working out in your favor and that they will come about. Complete acceptance of the nature of reality, that what you think and feel and expect will impress itself on reality to some or other degree. The more that you want, the more energy you put into that. The use of suggestion to the inner self and emotional energy, gathering that fun kind of thing. Trusting in inner reality and your broader self, I find essential. Having fun with it, developing the inner senses, taking action in framework 1, understanding probabilities to some or other degree, such a fascinating subject, and also kind of following the breadcrumbs. So if I want to create something, for example, I'll put some energy into that and some thought, and see something happening. I'm not sure what it is. I allow my imagination. Seth talks about the imagination and emotional energy can change anything, and I think that's true. So allowing the imagination to come up with these ideas and feelings and all that kind of stuff, and then I'll see a little bit of a response, and I will celebrate that I'm on the right track. That's part of the breadcrumbs, and then I just keep going. So I hope that's useful to you, and a couple of examples here. So in terms of income, finance has been a real challenge for me. I'm not sure why that is, but it has along the way. I suppose maybe because I want to do things differently. Maybe it's my natural rebellious nature. But actually, what I allowed myself to do was decide to write down actually what the business I work for myself doing online marketing. As well as coaching and all that kind of stuff. But essentially, I allowed myself to write down the business model that I wanted, and knew that, okay, so that was what I was impressing into reality. The probability existed already that was there. And so I fed that up and used my normal processes of relaxation and this type of thing. And I went onto Facebook, and I work on Facebook a lot, but I went to Facebook into a particular group and noticed that an old friend that I knew was asking for help. Now, because I know reality will react to me in a positive way, and that if I react positively, it's just going to speed up the process, I offered this person help. Free of charge, because he was asking about marketing and all this kind of stuff. And actually, it turned out when I went down to London, had a great time, had a bit of fun, and it turned into the exact project that I'd written down on a piece of paper. And so that was a very simple one. And I wasn't resistant to taking action. I wasn't resistant to going down to London. I wasn't resisting to talking about it. And it just unfolded in a really easy way. Now, that has changed now in that I'm changing my project, but it absolutely fitted at the time and has done me financially very well. And in terms of time management, all that kind of stuff, it created the business I want over the last 6 months, which has been awesome and amazing. And so I'm doing the same again in my next business venture. So in terms of relationship, now what happened was, again, I was on Facebook. Only that's the way to connect to the world, isn't it? The internet. So a reflection of our inner connections. So I was on Facebook, and actually somebody, a friend of a friend, asked for help. I offered some help. I didn't actually know her at the time, although she looked very nice. But I offered some help, really just to again offer help and see if I could whatever. We went out for a cup of coffee, and it turns out that I taught her healing about 10 years ago, and she recognized me. I didn't recognize her, but she recognized me, and we started talking actually about something completely different. And essentially we have been started going out, started talking, and we've been actually as a partner now for the last 2 years. So again, taking that action, and I really had a very strong intuitive feeling that this was a person that I'd like to know, and we've had our ups and downs, absolutely have. But at the end of the day, then I followed my inner senses, I took action, all those kind of things, and I was exploring the idea of coming back into a relationship at the time, and lo and behold, there we go. So I find I don't need to go around seeking things in a way of it's about, for me, about relaxation and then taking action when it feels right, and that's and expecting then that to be the issue solved, and generally it is. So for a house, I needed to move house very quickly. At a certain point, I'd ended a relationship quite a few years ago. And I knew that there was a probability. In fact, I'm moving soon and using the same processes. So I knew there was a probability of a really lovely house at a really great price that really suited me, and that was in a space that was spiritually enhancing. Okay, and that was an important thing. And now a flat came up 2 or 3 days later. Actually, it was owned by a Christian guy, a lovely, lovely, loving guy, and it felt right. And I took it there and then. So it was the first one I looked at. It was the second one that I'd looked at, and it really fitted the bill, and I've been there ever since. And now I'm using the same process to move now into a house and all this kind of stuff. So I know it's there. I just need to relax, and that's one of the keys, I think, to the magical approach. An expectation of people. So in terms of magically working with people, what I tend to do is just focus on the things that I want to see from them, and allow that to come out. So I don't tend to judge. What I tend to do is, if I want to see something in my reality, I tend to focus on, say, the goodness of a particular person or whatever it would be, and allow myself to feel that. And as I do, then again, it comes back, and everyone's very lovely. So relationships, you can use it in that as well. So specific health problems, although I am essentially very healthy, I had a toothache, an abscess. My partner at the time was a dentist and was going to have to take the tooth out. I rallied against that, of course, just out of interest, and managed to, and it was a bad abscess as well. And she was saying, well, technically, the answer to this is to have it out. And I decided to just take a week out. It did hurt, but to take a week out and actually see if I could undo this. And I did, and it went down in about 3 days and never had a problem since. So they're the types of things, from health to relationships to income to housing, all those types of things. Then I've used the magical approach, continue to, and that's what works for me. It just works really, really well. I don't need, like, I'm going to get a new car soon and a new house and this type of thing. I expect the right one to come along very quickly and with very little fuss, and for me to be able to create that. And I know that's exactly what's going to happen. So again, it allows me to relax. So confidence comes from results. Okay, expectation comes from results. And just to finish off now, what I would say is that a lot of life, a lot of what I've been knowing, I allow a lot of life to be background noise. So I don't get involved in things like gossip and other people's business and this type of stuff. What I tend to do, and it's a phrase somebody told me, I tend just to tend my own garden. And I do that very quietly, often or not. You may not believe, but I do that very quietly when it comes to creating the things I want, try and enjoy myself as much as possible and focus on the outcomes. And I allow my inner self, I allow Aaron, which I'm doing right now in finding the right house and the car and everything, I'm allowing Aaron actually to go out and kind of do that, to explore that for me, to come up with the right one. And I'm just going to thank him afterwards, and that will be that. So that's the summary. That's the magical approach. That's how I use it, and it's taken some effort, of course, but I think at the end of the day, the benefits far outweigh, and I know that I'm taking this into other lifetimes, other probabilities, because it's the learning of what we're here to do, to understand the nature of emotional and psychic energy, and to use it consciously to be that conscious creator. So I hope that's useful for you, maybe gives you a bit of confidence, a few ideas on how you can use it. But honestly, trust, building a safe universe, as Linda suggested, is absolutely key to it. And small steps, step by step, and trusting and having some fun with it, and then building your confidence from the results are the way to get to a point where you feel safe and where you're able to expect your reality to expand to be the best it can possibly be. Obviously it's ever becoming, and I am not where I want to be right now, but I am certainly know how I'm getting there, and the processes and the tools that I'm going to use. And the processes and tools are not worry, they're not concern, they're not fear, they are relaxation, they are expectation, and they are loving energy. And that's a great way for me to live, actually, when I think about it. So that's it. Have a great day. I hope that is useful for you, and any comments you've got or questions or whatever, then more than welcome to help you in any way I can. Okay, have a great day. Bye-bye.